UNU-INRA. We have the head of United Nations in Ghana, the resident coordinator. We have Dr. Tony Obin Esquire. And of course, you have our speaker, Ms. Sheila Khama. I'm not going to spend time doing protocol and things because we're running behind time. The only thing I'd like to say, I'm extremely privileged to be associated with this particular series. It's the 7th session of the Kwapong lectures, and I've been to the classroom to interact with the teachers and so forth. And basically, he warned his daughter, Osewa, that you should never let this boy beat you again. Yeah. He was blessed with 6 daughters. I say blessed because, you know, women are the power in this world. And without any more ado, let us move on to the performance by Aliwa the poet. Is Aliwa in the house? Yes. May I clap after the performance?
Thank you very much. All protocol observed to all dignitaries. So I have a little poem I wrote for this program specifically, so just give me a listening ear. Thank you very much. When all nature speaks, to all dignitaries. Mountains murmur. So I have a little rivers poem I wrote rumble, for this program, and even the air holds its breath. Africa is listening. From the gold fields of Obuasi to the copper veins of Zambia, to our very fertile cocoa lands, and to the silent hum of solar dreams rising in Tamale. They say we are in for a new scramble. A scramble not for land, but for the veins beneath, for the critical minerals that power tomorrow's world. But I ask, whose tomorrow? Ours or theirs? Professor Jampo once walked this very red earth and whispered, knowledge must lead the people, not the polished, not the powerful, but the farmer, the miner, the very architects of Africa's destiny. Today, UNU-INRA has called for Africa to lead with wisdom, to not let our green lands bleed from another man's machine, to not let lithium become another lost language that is only spoken in a currency of exploitation. So nature is speaking. Are we listening? She's tired of our silence and our greed. So let's gather. Scholars, statesmen, scientists, storytellers, men and women who still have justice at heart. Let's make sure we keep Africa and its resources here in the land. Let's not take advantage of what we have, but let's make sure we make this into green industrialization and not green depletion of what we have. So Africa must rise. Let it rise clean. Let it rise in conscience. Let it rise by the sound of its own drum with a rhythm that says that we will not export our future and import regrets. So when the memory of Kwapong walks into this hall, let us stand tall. For this soil, this legacy, this dream is our project. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for helping us get back on time. I'm very privileged to invite our Vice Chancellor, Professor Nana Abba Apia Amfo, to come and make some opening remarks. I would say that she's the 8th Vice Chancellor that I have experienced in my career and life in this university. And without trying to lick any boots or anything, I would say that she has been the most impressive Vice Chancellor in the last few years. Yeah. So I won't say anything more. Her bio is there for you to see.
Thank you very much. When you said 8th Vice Chancellor, I was wondering, where the 8th was coming from, because, of course, you lay the context, but before that, because I know I'm the 13th Vice Chancellor of this university, but that you have experienced. Thank you very much. Our distinguished keynote speaker, Ms. Sheila Khama, Director, UNU-INRA, my dear friend, Fatima Denton, the UN Resident Coordinator, freshly arrived, Kwapong, and my dear Professor Christopher Gordon, who, by the way, was the founding director of the Institute of Environment and Sanitation Studies, and our umpire for today, and the CEO of Petroleum Hub, Dr. Tony Kwapong, members of the diplomatic community, our special guests, esteemed colleagues, the media. I don't know if there are any students here since we are on break. Are there any students here? Okay, yeah. You are most welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor to be here for the 7th edition of the Nature Speaks lecture series, which is convened by UNU-INRA and held in memory of a giant in African education and international service, Professor Alex Edum Kwapong, the first Ghanaian Vice Chancellor of the University of Ghana and the first African Vice Rector of the United Nations University. This lecture series continues to uphold his legacy of academic excellence, visionary leadership, and service to society. Inasmuch as we are gathered here today for an academic lecture, it is also a celebration of partnership, collaboration, and shared commitment to Africa's sustainable development. The collaboration between UNU-INRA and the University of Ghana aligns with the university's 4th strategic priority area, which is engagement and partnerships. It stands as a model of how institutions can work hand in hand to address the continent's most pressing challenges. This lecture series is one of the most enduring examples of such partnerships. Each year, the Kwapong series provides a platform for thought-provoking dialogue and critical reflection on issues of importance to Africa's development. This year's lecture continues in that proud tradition. It has been designed not only as a space to share cutting-edge research, but also as a platform for dialogue, reflection, and most importantly, practical action. Through this engagement, we are bridging the gap between research and policy and between ideas and implementation. The focus for this year's lecture, the role of critical minerals in Africa's transition to green industrialization, could not be more timely. As the global economy shifts towards sustainability, Africa stands at a critical juncture. The continent's abundance of critical minerals, as we saw demonstrated through the poetry performance, offers both tremendous opportunities and significant challenges. How we manage, utilize, and govern these resources will determine whether we become a blessing that fuels transformation or a burden that deepens inequality. Addressing the issues outlined above fits squarely within the university's mandate and mission. As a national and regional center of higher learning, we are charged to generate knowledge, build capacity, and inform public policy. Our role is to translate rigorous scholarship into practical solutions to ensure that science, technology, governance reform, and inclusive policy intersect to produce shared prosperity. Today's session is therefore a concrete expression of that role, a knowledge space where bold ideas can be exchanged, debated, and more importantly, even contested. Today's discussions are therefore not only academic but deeply consequential. By weighing the pros and cons of critical minerals for Africa's development agenda, we continue to shape strategies that can ensure these resources drive inclusive sustainability and resilient growth. Beyond the exchange of ideas, today's event also reminds us of something fundamental: the power of partnerships. When institutions such as UNU-INRA and the University of Ghana join forces, they amplify their collective impact. Together, we become catalysts for change, capable of influencing policy, shaping innovation, and inspiring the next generation of African thinkers and leaders. And so on behalf of the University of Ghana and our esteemed partners, I extend my heartfelt appreciation to all participants, researchers, and distinguished guests gathered here today. Your presence and hopefully active engagement will give life to this forum. You are the reason why these conversations matter, because it is through your insights, your experiences, and your commitment that knowledge is translated to action. Let us therefore seize this opportunity to learn from one another, to challenge conventional thinking, and to inspire innovative solutions. Together, we can build the Africa we envision, an Africa where critical minerals are not just extracted, but strategically leveraged to drive green industrialization, sustainable prosperity, and social equity. And so on this note, I wish us all fruitful deliberations, and thank you for your attention.
VC, thank you very much for those remarks. I think your stress on partnerships and also the next generation is vital. We now invite to give us some remarks the United Nations Ghana Resident Coordinator, His Excellency Zia Chowdhury. Again, he has a very impressive bio. The only thing I'll say here is that he has 25 years of experience in development and humanitarian action. And he used to be the country director of care in Sudan and Bangladesh, both countries which are not easy to work in. And the fact that you coordinated the Rohingya refugee crisis is something that I think we should applaud you of even before you speak.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. You have the floor. And so far, everybody has kept your time, so.
Thank you very much. You know, after you spoke, sir, my knees are knocking. And unfortunately, it's a see-through podium here, so I'm a bit nervous. Okay, but thank you very much. And good afternoon to all the distinguished colleagues, friends who are here. I think the protocol is very well established, and I respect that. So I believe it was done well. I believe you did it well, so let me just move on. But it is an honor to be here today to join you all for the this year's Kwapong lecture. And I've only been here 4 months, but since arriving, I've heard already that this is an annual event which is very much respected and appreciated in the country. So I think, you know, the fact that it provokes vital conversations is important, more important than ever, which I'll come to in a moment when we talk about Africa's development future. First of all, I want to commend the United Nations University Institute for Natural Resources. It's quite a tricky acronym, UNU-INRA. Let me say UNU now. in advancing the research and dialogue on sustainable development. I also want to thank our wonderful hosts, the University of Ghana, for, I think, long-standing and extremely productive partnership which they've had with the UN in promoting research, innovation, and knowledge for development. So I want to thank both of those wonderful institutions. The UN family in Ghana is quite broad. It's more than 40 individual entities are accredited. One of those is UNU. But we're all of us are proud to be part of the Kwapong lecture series, and I'm particularly pleased this year because it's my first year to attend, so happy to be here. But it's also important because I think that this is one of the defining questions of our time in Africa particularly. How can Africa harness critical minerals as a new opportunity for green industrialization and inclusive growth? And UNU is perfectly placed to do that because its mission, and I'll read it here, is to amplify African perspectives, to promote made in Africa solutions, and to build capacity in natural resource management. And those mission goals are perfectly aligned with the United Nations vision for sustainable development overall, which is encapsulated in the 17 SDGs. I know that the UNU also works in mineral governance, green economy, and energy transitions, and through that it demonstrates with policy, with science and capacity building how all these things together have to be together to really unlock the future for Africa's potential. And the UN as an institution and the UN member states need institutions like United Nations University because they stay at the front lines of the latest themes. They bring academic excellence, which the VC also said, and academic rigor. They bring that to the public. And I think in these times, that's especially important that we respect academic excellence and all the hard work and thinking that goes into forming opinions, especially in times where scientific data and even academic institutions are being trashed by a very few but very loud voices. I'm not going to say who, but generally, we see around the world, even when we look at America and these, hallowed institutions being put through the test because of what they say and what they allow on campus. So I think that, let's lectures like this, institutions like the University of Ghana are very critical to keep up with academic rigor, but also to give students that great space to think freely. A few years ago, even the term critical minerals was largely unknown to many in the public. Now it's discussed in regular media, and we all know that there are even offers to buy or take over entire territories for the purpose of securing access to minerals. That's how important minerals are. And the global race for critical minerals is reshaping trade, investment, and cooperation. We know that there are many new opportunities, but also associated risks. Nations are competing for cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, graphite, and others, which are the building blocks of renewable energy and digital technology. Africa has placed itself already as a strategic actor rather than a passive source of minerals. And discussions like these today will help keep us in Africa in the driver's seat. And for the United Nations, we join the many voices like University of Ghana and others, and our keynote speaker, in calling for a just and inclusive energy transition so that countries can industrialize sustainably, they can strengthen their governance and ensure prosperity without harming people or planet. And the burden of leadership has to lie here for many reasons, but starting with the fact that Africa holds nearly a third of all the world's critical minerals, placing it at the center of the global energy transition. That natural endowment, one of many, offers us here in Africa an extraordinary opportunity to drive industrialization and also to have job creation and add regional value. But that only works if the countries in Africa invest in domestic industries, to invest in jobs in a local value chain, and also improve governance. Without that shift, Africa does risk missing its chance to convert its resource wealth into broad-based and lasting development. So the continent can, and it must, and it will, I'm sure, choose a different path, one which is rooted in knowledge, cooperation, self-determined growth. And also here in Ghana, we know that these are important things because the social and environmental costs of illegal gold mining, for example, it reminds us how critical resources are to having peace, rule of law, and equitable growth, and all of the above for future generations as well. I want to just mention a couple of other countries as well. I know that he's looking at me with big eyes now. I'm almost done. Yeah. Okay. Like, for example, I was reading about Namibia, where there are new investments in green hydrogen, and that offers a promise of clean energy, but it also highlights the need for transparent governance and also how to share the benefits of that clean energy. I've seen in Zambia, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and others that copper and cobalt is reshaping how economies are structured, creating jobs and growth, but also testing standards of labor, transparency, and environmental protection. So these are examples that show how Africa's mineral wealth carries both huge promise but also responsibility. And the challenge is to balance growth with justice, but also opportunities with sustainabilities. In this context, I want to also raise that UNRWA has a critical mineral information and knowledge hub, which I just learned about. That's another acronym-heavy thing. So it's called CMINC for short, CMINC. Please look it up. Critical Mineral Information and Knowledge Hub. It's a great initiative as far as I've seen. It's an Africa-led effort to strengthen the continent's ability to manage its own mineral wealth strategically and sustainability by improving data analysis, by providing policy support. It helps governments, supports governments to make informed decisions, enhancing value addition and negotiating from a position of strength. And that CMINC also complements other initiatives like the Africa Mining Vision and the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, Free Trade Area. So all of the above, so important why we're here today. Now, you know, everybody uses AI to write speeches these days, right? So I didn't, by the way. I asked UNU to write it for me, and they did. Maybe they used AI, but there's one paragraph here which is written by AI. I'm just being very transparent, and here it is, because there's a word here I would never use on my own. The story of Africa's critical minerals can unfold in one of two ways: as a new scramble defined by external interests, or as a new renaissance driven by African innovation, ownership, and green transformation. So I would never use a word like renaissance, my dear friends, but here it is. ChatGPT has helped me to say that amazing sentence. Just don't quote me, it wasn't me. But just to say, you know, and I'm coming to an end now, so I see you're about to stand up. With initiatives like CMINC, Africa has that and other tools and expertise to become a leader to shape on its own terms the global green transition. Finally, colleagues, we're not here to listen to me, we're here for someone else. That someone else is Ms. Sheila Khama, who has real deep experience in minerals and energy, and she is an African leader that we all can be proud of because of her huge work on this topic. Her insights are why we're here today, to listen to her. But I also want to say on a side note that I just came from spending 5.5 years in her beautiful country, Botswana. And as Botswana only has 2.3 million people, it just so happens that I know some of her family members. She doesn't know that, but I know them. I've even had coffee and tea with some of them. And I also know that we go to the same cafes and restaurants. Again, not because we love the same food, maybe we do, but because Botswana has only very few cafes and restaurants. It's a small place, but a beautiful place. I want to say to her in her own language, Dumela, Mehama, rather. And I also want to say that, you know, Setswana, her language is not easy to learn. Dumela is a greeting. Kea laboga means thank you, 2 words. But the one that you're going to learn today is the simplest one. And it's my favorite word in the entire language of Botswana, the main language of Botswana. And that word is used to, the word means, she's going to know immediately what I'm talking about. It means rain, which is so powerful and blessed in a dry, desert, arid country like Botswana. So important that the Botswana people named their currency after the word rain. The word is pula, quite simply, P-U-L-A. And it's quite common when you are happy or when you're having a meeting, when you end, when you start, just to shout the word pula. So I'm going to ask you to shout that in welcome, warm welcome to Ms. Sheila Khama. So after 3, 2, 1, you'll shout pula. 3, 2, 1, pula! Welcome.
Thank you very much. You've actually done the introduction of our next speaker for me. But I do have to say that when you look at her bio, the thing that struck me was that she used to handle all the diamonds in Botswana. As the CEO of De Beers Botswana, she's also served as executive director of FTSE, Nasdaq, Saudi Stock Exchange, Saudi Energy, a whole list of very, very powerful positions. But as I think it's been sorted out now, yeah. But I just want to touch upon one aspect of the Kwapong lectures, and that is Africa has lacked voice. And that is what UNU-INRA brings to the table. They are giving an African voice in areas where we had no voice. Universities can be described as the voice of reason, because we should be thinking not only for now, but also for the future. And I'm also very glad to see in our audience, this is Prisek, Prisek Legon. What happened at the, I won't say it. I won't say it. Because by 2050, 1/4 of the world's population under 25 will be in Africa. So we need to have that voice, that positioning in such a way that we can make a difference, or you can make a difference in the direction that Africa is going to go to. Now I see that all the electronics are sorted out. I have great pleasure in inviting our keynote speaker all the way from Botswana to give us some pula. Please.
Thank you very much, Vice Chancellor, representative of the UN, all protocol observed. It never ceases to amaze me how people say all the important things, but non-essentials. What should have been said is Ghana is my second home. As a young person at 19, I lived here and studied at Legon. Nobody cares, apparently, about that. As a matter of fact, I was here for 4 years between 2010 and 2013. Again, nobody gives diddle squat, so there you are. But nevertheless, I appreciate being asked to come and speak, not because I think I have more knowledge than most, but because none but ourselves. In my brief remarks, I won't use the presentation. I'm a great believer you must speak with the people, not at the people. Presentations have a way of talking at people. But I do have 3 slides, which when I get to, I will ask the IT people to flash on the screen because they make a powerful point. In trying to answer the question, is it a scramble or an opportunity for Africa to transist? I thought it essential to provide context. Everyone who has come before me made reference to critical minerals. So let me start there. So there is no such thing as critical minerals, not in the mining industry. Critical minerals must be understood as a policy context by European countries who, in envisioning a new revolution in which there would be decarbonized economies, determined that there were certain mineral component parts that were essential for that transition. What does that tell you? That minerals are neither naturally critical, permanently critical, or as a matter of their chemistry, critical. They're critical because you make a deliberate decision that you will drive your industries and your economies in a particular direction. And in doing that, therefore, necessitate certain inputs that call for certain raw materials. So that's very important to remember that. And this is important for the young people with the blue shirts. The second thing then that this tells us is that the criticality of any raw material is very specific to a particular country based in that country's own policy of how they want to drive their economies. It also means that if you are an African, you want to think of it. This use of critical minerals in Africa is fundamentally flawed. Because what we have done as policymakers, academia, is that we have taken a policy from the EU, which was started in 2014 under the raw materials strategy by the EU, and decided that we can willy-nilly import that phrase and presume that it has a relevance to our circumstances. Let me be as clear as I can. It doesn't, because it was coined specifically to address Europe's desire to bridge the gap between itself, transition to clean energy, and China's dominance of mineral substances. Now, unless your country, unless your continent fits that profile, you must agree with me, you're going to have to find a different term that is appropriate to your needs, both from a policy and an industrialization perspective. So that's the big picture. Be that as it may, what in today's world globally underpins this notion of criticality? There are several factors. The first and most important is security of supply. It so happens that having dominated industrialization over the last 100 years, Europe is losing hold, in part because of the arrival of China, but also because Europe no longer has territories on whom it can rely for supply. And so, as the world contemplates a decarbonized economy, Europe is having to ask itself, if I want to transist, how am I going to resource? Where is the feedstock for this transition going to come from in a state of neo-colonial structures? The United States is having to do the same. In a world in which the United States and Europe have said, in not so many words, not in my backyard. So there's a strange irony that the United States and Europe understand that their industries need to consume large quantities of minerals, but the same territories also say, I'm not mining here, I will source them elsewhere. Because Europe, having industrialized, reached a certain level of economic and material affluency, like most societies, then began to aspire to less tangible issues, one of which was governance, transparency, environmental stewardship and raised a whole generation of Europeans who think mining is dirty. That mining is not the right thing to do, except comes transition to clean energy and mining takes center stage. But you have a groundswell of young Americans who don't want the state of Nevada to open up and mine in lithium. You have a young generation of Europeans who think that they must transition to clean energy as long as it's not happening on their backyard. Part of Europe's criticality, therefore, is self-inflicted. By doing what for the last 30 years the Europeans thought from an ESG perspective was the right thing, little did Europe know Europe was shooting itself in the foot, that one day those same governance, environmental and social stewardship principles would be Europe's, if you wish, headwind. This is part of what drives criticality. The other aspect that drives criticality is entrepreneurship. Let's be very clear. Transition to clean energy is big business. Let me repeat. Transition to clean energy is more an entrepreneurial thing. It's more an industrial thing than it is an environmental thing. Big money will be made from transition to clean energy. And the countries that find themselves capable of hosting this groundswell of industrial development are the leaders of tomorrow's economies. Countries that find themselves on the edges of the groundswell of this industrialization will, in effect, be the losers of tomorrow. The world does not refer to China as the world's biggest factory for nothing. That is because China is the home for this groundswell, and China will lead the world as long as it occupies this space. So when you think of critical minerals, think also that actually more than an environmental drive, it is also entrepreneurship, where interest groups are influencing policy to displace certain old technology with new ones, because there lies the future if you are going to be the Rockefeller or the Ford of the next 100 years. This is your moment of reckoning, and less about the environment. If you doubt, let me give you an example. So if we want to decarbonize our economies, one of the most obvious things to do is to recycle material and create essentially a circular economy in which everything that we extract goes through the value chain, and from the moment we extract it, we know at what point it will expire and know that we will create a feedstock. Find me a country that's doing that. That tells you why, if the environment is the centerpiece of what we are doing, does the one obvious solution not form part of the groundswell of forming? Now, everyone can tell you about critical minerals. Can many people tell you about the circular economy? And yet the circular economy is integral to the solution. The circular economy, you see, will reduce consumption. It will reduce mining. And when you do that, you will shrink economies. When you do that, you will shrink companies. Your manufacturers of vehicles in Germany will have to scale down because demand for cars will drop. Nobody is talking about reducing that. Nobody is talking about saying we will only allow one vehicle per family. Nobody is saying we will use trams to go to work. No more driving. Do you know why? Because the German auto industry would suffer. The American auto industry would suffer. The Japanese auto. So if you think of the balance of this, you begin to see that there's a level at which there's commerce, there's geopolitics, and then there's public narrative. You want to make the difference between the public narrative and what really is the direction of travel. Now, I wanted to show you this image because the poet reminded us that Africa is sort of the center of the universe in the supply and demand. So let's start with the supply. But before I do so, I want, as you look at this, I want you to find a country on that list called Africa. When you do, raise your hand. But I also want, if you find a country on that which is from Africa, make a mental note. Make a mental note of how often an African country appears there. When you have done that, I want you to think of what the poet said and conclude for yourself. Is Africa really the center of the mineral supply or not? So let's start with copper and cobalt, which are two of the most critical minerals. So as you can see, the DRC leads in the cobalt space, followed by Indonesia, Russia, Australia, Madagascar, etc. If we move to copper, it's Chile, Peru, DRC, China, United States, Russia, Indonesia. And then if we move to graphite, which is another critical mineral for battery storage, then it's China, Madagascar, Mozambique, South Korea, Russia, etc. And if we move to lithium, it's Chile, Australia, Argentina, etc. And then the last two minerals is manganese and nickel. There we have Indonesia, Philippines, New Caledonia, Russia, Canada, etc. I'm waiting for a hand to shoot up when you see a country here called Africa. And then Ghana being my second home, I deviated from the bar graph to a pie chart just to find, so I could find Ghana. Ghana there appears under manganese. So you see, there is no Africa. Why is this important? That's another false narrative. So it is true there exists a geophysical mass called Africa, but actually there is no jurisdiction that is legally and constitutionally competent to speak as Africa. This is your first big problem. If you want to engage the world as a single entity, you are going to have to constitute yourself such that you can engage the rest of the world with the necessary constitutional and legal powers to contract and to demand that your 53 member states do X and Y. You can't do that because unlike the EU, you are not constituted that way. We are a club of like-minded people with a common history, but not competent to do any of this stuff we tell our children day in and day out that we are going to do. Now, why is that so difficult? Because we too fall into the trap of a common narrative. There is no, in mineral terms, there are specific countries that will contract with specific mining companies and act alone. And they act alone. And if you then ask Sheila to come from Botswana and say, is this Africa's moment? Your question is flawed, but because it is premised on that false assumption that I can speak about a common constitutional jurisdiction. In truth, I can't. And if I do, I'm doing the young people. Why are they only boys? I don't get it. Okay. So I want you to remember this. We exist as a physical mass, but we are not a country. We don't have a president, we don't have a parliament, we don't have a minister of Africa. And if we want to speak, then we've got to fix that, or else we've got to find another way. Because otherwise, we are talking contrary to reality. So that's an important thing. Let's look at who consumes. Can I have the next slide, please? Right. So we've said who supplies what. I think it was His Excellency Zia who said Africa accounts for about 30% of the world's minerals. I'm the bearer of bad news. That too is not true. Let me explain why it's not true. Because to be able to say that with absolute certainty, you have to have explored the entire continent for all the 42 substances in the periodic table. You have to have made discoveries and quantified these discoveries, not just in terms of availability, but in terms of the mineral economics of it. Then you have to have dug deep enough into the earth to go to the very end of the deposit and then quantify it. I'm not sure who came up with the 30%, but I just want to appeal to you, don't say it again. And if they have trouble with you, send them to me. But nobody can say this. And why is it important? I'm not being petty, because the more we say it, the more our policymakers think they can bring the world on its knees. Well, look at the bar graphs I've just showed you. Look at how few African countries appear in this. And I chose this graph specifically because it doesn't say reserves. It says production. So it's real. It is not an estimation. It is production that is happening because we have been able to quantify, and we know these resources exist. Look how frequently Australia features. Look how frequently Russia features. Look how frequently Chile features. Look how frequently Peru features. Look how frequently China features. And then look that when we look at lithium, the largest reserves being in Zimbabwe are number 10. Chile says 1.2 billion. Zimbabwe says 100 million. What is this? And we're going to bring the world to our knees? Our policies have to be grounded in fact, if they are going to be meaningful. They cannot be grounded in the false sense of bravado. It's not helpful. There are certain countries that are very rich, like Guinea, in iron ore. Guinea is unparalleled. And we know it because we've measured it. We know it because we know that the iron ore content in Guinea is 65% relative to 35% in Australia. Think about that. If you hold the rock from Simandu, it well and truly feels like steel, unprocessed, unparalleled. So we don't have to feel that we have to have a sense of ownership where there is none. If we say Botswana is rich in diamonds, because we know it. 31 million carats a year. What is that? It's unparalleled. If we say the DRC is rich in cobalt, it's because we know it. But then, when we say Chile is rich in lithium, it's because we know it. And so the list goes on. Here is something else we should be mindful of. Even where Africa has resources, Africa is vulnerable because one of the drivers of criticality is the technology that prevails. The reason we need nickel is the prevailing battery storage technology requires nickel. What do you think happens if somebody in Silicon Valley makes a new discovery overnight? That value sunk. So do not rest on your laurels, even if you have the mineral that is needed today, because just because it's needed today doesn't mean it'll be needed forever. And because Africa does not lead technology, it is other people who will determine the value of what you have. Think how vulnerable that makes you. That even in the things that you have that the world needs is because the world has determined that technologically they need it. I think it was then an American natural resource economist who said, natural resources are not, they become. Which is to say, first you make a discovery, understand its chemical makeup, and then understand its qualities, and then based on its qualities, design technologies that require that. And that is not natural, that copper is needed. It is because somebody went through that process. That process can therefore also be reversed such that you are left with stranded assets. Where am I in terms of time, sir? Thank you. So if we then look at the demand end, let's have a look at who's consuming. I'm trying to answer the question of whether or not it's an opportunity to transist. Now look at who's consuming this so-called critical minerals. Do you see an African country there? So what does that tell you? The answer is no. There's no opportunity for transformation here. Because by now, you should be having industries that are consuming. And if they don't, the train has left the station. It really is that simple, however tragic. These countries are able to consume because they have industries and they need feedstock. They are able to consume because they have the infrastructure. They are able to consume because they have energy security. They are able to consume because they have academic institutions that work with the government, their defense industries, to continuously innovate and create a groundswell of industrial activity. African countries don't have that, and therefore you are still a supplier. So back to the poet, you are a supplier not because somebody chose that you should supply, but because you did not, as a region and member states, create the necessary ecosystem industrially to consume. And when you do so, then you too will become the consumer of your own resources. Otherwise, the value of your resources, tragically, is that somebody is consuming them. It doesn't mean you couldn't, but it just means you haven't gotten your act together, period. Anything else is detail, quite frankly. And I think being an African child, I can speak truth to power in the knowledge that nobody will begrudge me. But also, let's say, maybe I'm wrong on the side of the country. Look at the industries. How large is the energy industry from Cape Town to Alexandria? How large is it? How large is it in Botswana? How large is it in Ghana? How large is the defense industries in our countries? How large is the industry for electronics? How large is advanced manufacturing, healthcare, electronics, and so forth? What is the brand of iPhone from Africa? Somebody help me. What is the brand? But these are the industries that are consuming. This is where you're feeding. And if you don't have those industries, then naturally you are not driving that demand. And if you are not in that space, then naturally the opportunities of transition to clean industry are lost on you. But the truth is, it doesn't have to be like that. It can change. But to do so, our own mindset has to change. And my genuine observation is that it isn't changing. Let me give you an example of where change and where I think the disruption is going to come from. The disruption is going to come from seabed mining. I don't know, how many of you have ever heard the term seabed mining? Just raise your hand if you have. Right. So I do have to declare my interest. I serve on a board of a NASDAQ company, which will probably be the first one to vacuum polymetallic nodules from the seabed. We estimate in a small area in the Pacific, over which we have a license, that on that seabed are 71 million tons of these fist-like things that in near equal measure, believe it or not, contain cobalt, copper, nickel, and manganese. Think what happens if this company comes into production. What happens to the market? The world will change, at least insofar as the commodities are concerned. As you know, I think it was around 2014 in the city of London, among academic institutions, the largest growth in terms of an area of science attracting students was space geology. And so if it's not going to be on our backyard, maybe it will be on the seabed. For that matter, maybe it will be on the planet Mars if Elon Musk succeeds. Now think where that leaves you. So not only have you missed the Industrial Revolution, Not only have you missed the transition to clean energy revolution, my God, you are now missing the seabed and the space. What is going on here? You have to ask. But there could actually be an even greater threat to Africa's natural wealth. It's just man-made substitutes. As we speak today, entrepreneurs are saying, okay, so I can't go to Colombia and mine copper because of the rainforest. So they are working 24 hours to find a man-made substance that will have exactly the same qualities of copper, that will have exactly the same qualities as manganese, that will have exactly the same qualities as lithium, which is to say, your assets may just become redundant, even if you had them, because entrepreneurs will find this, because countries out of national security and the fear of being held to ransom by those who are in possession will put money into science to render your position of competitiveness null and void, which is why your asset is not the minerals that nature happens to place in your backyard. Your future is the brains of these young people, because they will shape the future, whatever it becomes, while our generation is feeling sorry for ourselves and looking in the rear mirror. And if you think also about demand, I'm not sure how mindful we are, but if I look towards the Gulf region, the geopolitics of the world will change hugely. Because if you have been observing, you will see that the Gulf states are investing hugely in minerals. The Saudis overnight just bought 11% of Vale, and now they own one of the world's largest producers of iron ore because they have deep pockets. Now, don't take me wrong, but I think democracy is oversold. You see, here we will be electing Joe. Joe will say he'll do this. Joe won't do it. Then we elect Jane. Jane said she'll fix it. Jane won't fix it. The Gulf does not have the burden of electoral politics. So for better or for worse, decisions can be made and made very quickly. I don't know about many countries, but in my country, we seem to spend more time getting ready for the next election than administering affairs of state. And if that is so, you can see how democracy isn't going to serve you in a world in which you have to move and move quickly. And here I'm thinking that Indochina, and for that matter, the Gulf states, will change the geopolitics. Oman is one of the countries that has just gotten a license to go and look for minerals on the seabed, because they are saying, we are a small principality, we know we don't have minerals, cut to the chase, let's go to sea. And so it won't matter any longer. And so, in conclusion, the question you ask, is there a scramble? Damn right there is. But it's not your scramble, it's somebody else's scramble. So let's just be clear about that. Is there transition to clean energy? Hell no, not around here. Because first we must industrialize. And when we have, then we will decarbonize our economies. And when we do so, we will do so by transiting, because we will move from a fossil-based system of industrialization to one that is clean, driven by cleaner sources of energy. But here and now, you must first attract investment in exploration. You must then attract investment in infrastructure. You must retain talent here at home so that they too can innovate. And then you must cut down on the politics of political parties and focus on the politics of nation state. In Africa, there is no politics of the nation states. It's just the politics of political. We have become well and truly beholden to party politics, and the countries are, for all intents and purposes, orphaned. All the 54 countries, they are all orphaned as sovereign, as the political elite and the politicians run roughshod over us with us feeling sorry for ourselves and wearing T-shirts, because democracy is oversold. And in the space of critical minerals, policies on how to use our natural resources, how to trade with other countries, it is our Achilles heel. Let me leave it at that. I hope that I have been sufficiently controversial for you to want to ask questions. If you don't ask questions, I shall be very disappointed, because it means then I wasn't sufficiently controversial. Thank you, sir.
In Ghana, we often do something which I don't like, but today I'm going to do it. Keep it up there. Can we give her another round of applause? And because of time, we are just 2 minutes out of time now, so thank you to everybody. You brought us back. Dr. Obin, I don't envy you. You are going to discuss this as a discussant. Again, I have a very elaborate biography of you with a very nice picture of you and so forth. But hold on. I'm going to take my prerogative as chair to recognize somebody. And that is Dr. Akwa, former director of the EPA and a former member of the Minerals Commission when you're in that old building. Yes. Thank you so much for coming. Yeah. So as you come up, he's been the chairman of Minerals Commission, Chamber of Mines, Goldfields Ghana, Tallow Oil, ARB, Apex Bank, founder and president of African Institute of Extractive Industries, and on and on. He's also a lawyer, but we forgive you. Yeah, so please, over to you.
A geographer and a development specialist, so I became a lawyer by accident. In the interest of time, permit me to just go straight the discussions. And you are right, I am in deep problem, because when Sheila speaks in the way he has spoken and shattered all our existing knowledge, it is very difficult to even raise any issue. But suffice it to say that of critical minerals, a new scramble or opportunity for green industrialization of Africa is not merely an academic thinking. It is for me, the most significant economic and geopolitical question facing our continent. Now, we have been made to believe that we sit on 30-something% of all the natural resources, the minerals. Now we've been told that we should go and revise our notes. I'm sure a lot of people going to write exams will be thinking about this as a response, but now we have a responsibility to revise our note. Sheila has raised serious concerns about the geographical richness of Africa and the accelerating global demand for minerals in the like of lithium, cobalt, graphite, manganese, nickel, and so on and so forth. She has raised these questions not because there are no minerals here, or possibly not because we don't dominate, but because we don't know. Because we don't know. As a continent, I don't think we've spent our resources to understand the level of mineralization that we have. In fact, even me, as someone who has been in the mining field for some time, I've raised the question of mapping of our minerals, we all know that gold is, in fact, and we are very There's this sexy thing that Ghana is the #1 gold producer in Africa. So nice, bragging right. But you probably don't know the amount of gold in this country, and that explains partly why we are fighting all over the place, destroying ourselves, making the gold that we know also being a curse to us. Not many people thought that there would be gold in the north. Everybody always thought about Ashanti Belt, the Taquarian Rock, and all those stuff. And now all of a sudden, apart from the Volta region, where there hasn't been any active mining, almost everywhere in Ghana, there is some form of gold mining going on. And the result is so eloquent to us that we see. Now, scramble for Africa, for historians, it doesn't sound like a good word at all, good phrase, because scramble for anything Africa reminds us of the Berlin Conference, when people sat somewhere to divide Africa among themselves. This scramble appears to be the same. And from what Sheila has said, the scramble comes from policies of the North, trying to actually define the way we think about our minerals. So the scramble is over there. But for us as African, I believe that there will be a scramble if we do not consciously try to know what we have. That is the first scramble. It's a mental scramble. We don't know what we have, so obviously that will the others will decide it for us. Again, we will be scrambling if we don't think about value addition. And I'll be talking about where we can go in that direction. Because we remain at the bottom of the value chain, extracting the ore, but importing the finished product. If we don't think about value addition, then even if we have the lithiums, the cobalt, the nickels in the quantities that we are dreaming of, we'll still be at the bottom of the chain. And that will be another scramble for us. And then, of course, if we don't have the right policy, there's this policy capture, some people call it. External forces will dictate resource policy to secure favorable access, circumventing local participation. Again, that will be another meaning of scrambling, because we will not take the commanding height of policy. Europe will be determining our policies. And so they will come and then manage to dictate the resource policies that you secure them favorable portion of what we have or what we think we sit on. So again, and that's scramble. Then of course, it will also be scramble if we consciously make it a curse on ourselves, whilst communities suffer, others extract and make the value out of it, so that the community impact is minimal. In fact, it's actually negative in some cases, and then others make something out of it. So it's very, very important that we see scramble not only as a struggle, but also as a mindset change, as policy change, as determination to change the narrative. Otherwise, we will be talking about it as history. We'll be talking about it as what century was that? In the 17th century, the parcellation of Africa for other people. So let's look at the strategic opportunities, because they're saying that is it a strangle? There's a question. Is it a scramble or a new opportunity for us? I think, assuming that we have what we think we have, and again, I'm trying to contradict Sheila, because Sheila says that, look, please, you don't have it. Don't go out telling your people that you have it. It's like when we were in secondary school. You find some of the boys walking with girls, secondary school, And when they see beautiful Mercedes-Benz coming, oh, please, please, let's hide. My father is coming. Meanwhile, his father is a cocoa farmer who, takes care of other things. So in this particular case, we need to, even if we think we need to have strategies to address that. And I'm praying that we have, And I believe we need to move into integration, vertical integration, just beyond extraction. We must aim firstly for beneficiation. And as I said, value addition is very key. African minerals have never, in Ghana, we produce manganese. And we have produced, in fact, we used to produce one of the rarest form of manganese in this country. They call it the insutite. So they call it the insutite. Now, and what value addition we add to manganese in Ghana? Washing. We just put water on it, and then we export. So the value addition we make onto manganese is by washing. What kind of value is that? Let's also look at bauxite. What kind of value do we add to bauxite? And we've mined bauxite since, I think, 1920 or something. And manganese was mined only because it was a war material. It wasn't because they thought it would benefit us. The World War was a decision, the reasons why manganese was hurriedly mined in the Insuta region. And we have mined for this long. We haven't added a kobo to it in terms of value. So if you want to look at it, should it be the case that we have all the critical minerals that we think we do have, we must also think about value addition. And I think Sheila made a very critical point of, using our period to also transform ourselves before, I think he was talking about just transition. Our transition to a decarbonized world, a clean energy, is very important. It's very essential that we transition. But this transition must be funded by what we have. And that is why, as some of you know, I heard the petroleum hub. Some people have argued that, but we are moving away from fossil fuel. Why are you going to do petroleum hub? And my answer has been very simple. What should we do with the fossil fuel we have? Should we just throw that away? No, we must very carefully manage that, build, refine them, use other sources of energy. Once you have the resources, you will transition very justly into a cleaner energy. I know in our plan, we do have a petrochemical industry. We do have, in fact, for all the critical minerals, critical infrastructure, the core infrastructure, we are going to use gas, which is a little cleaner than fuel oil. And we are going to have a lot of gas. Ghana is going to have a lot of gas. So we're going to be using that. And the other infrastructure, we're going to use solar, green hydrogen, and other. So the mix should benefit us, not benefiting other people. I've been told my time is up. But so let me just conclude here because my time, and of course, governance is very important. I like Sheila's point of democracy overpriced, because I think we spend time in politics and we destroy ourselves with politics. So everybody comes, want to take care of himself, herself, and the family, and then the Ghana sit down weeping, or the continent, not Ghana, because it's all replete everywhere. So I think it's very important. Governance is key. We have a window of opportunity. People are thinking now. The young guys, the young people are now, their mindset is not the same as those of us who went through Legon in the 80s, even those of us in the 80s. Some of us were not privileged to have Professor Kwapong as, I wasn't even born by that time maybe. I also was a PhD fellow at UNU, Japan. And I was also unfortunate to have him as the rector over there. He had also left. There was one Professor Trasisio de la Santa that we went to meet. So this discussion must go on. It's very critical. It's very central to our future. And I want to thank UNU-INRA, Dr. Denton and her team for this initiative that has continued. I want to thank you, Sheila, for your time. You are always so apt and on point in terms of issues that everybody see this way. She tries to point out where we are overseeing and underseeing. Thank you very much.
Very much. One of the reasons that I've been trying to on time is that this particular platform is for discourse. It's not just it's not just to sit and listen. We want participation. We want questions. We want clarity. But there's something that I would like to point out. Many of our cocoa farmers 10 years ago had never eaten chocolate. They had never tasted chocolate. They produced the cocoa and it was exported. They never had the opportunity to see what they had produced. And I think, is it Golden Tree? The Ghana Cocoa had a program to take chocolate bars to the cocoa growing area so people who taste, this is what you are producing. This is what is going to happen with our minerals. We will be exporting the lithium and none of our industries are going to use them and so forth. But this is the time for questions. So if you need any clarity, clarification, anything like that, this is the time that you need to ask your questions. Our keynote speaker says she'll be very upset if no questions are asked. So please, just raise your hand. Somebody will come and take this mic. Who is handling the mic? Yep. Okay, you have a mic there. Could you identify yourself and keep your question brief and to the point?
Thank you very much, sir. My name is Gusi Kende Jijoho. I have about 3 questions.
Could you repeat the name again?
My name is Gusi Kende Jijoho.
Hey, okay.
So I have about 3 questions here on my notes.
Okay, so you go ahead, and if we can answer them, we shall in the time.
The first question is about underlying issues that comes with illegal mining in West Africa. And my question is most especially by the Chinese, because there is this issue with illegal mining and...
Hold on. Let us keep the discussion to what our panel can speak to.
Okay.
Okay, so try and have your questions focused on the topic.
Okay.
Because the question you're answering, that is a 1-week seminar. Yeah. So let's focus on what we are talking about.
My question is, are there awareness programs by the UNU-INRA towards educating people about this issue, talking about the issues that comes with illegal mining and managing them? My second question is empowerment, education, and engagement of African university students when it comes to critical minerals issue. Are there programs? If there are programs, I would like to be educated on these programs. Thank you very much. I think I will limit it to those 2 questions.
Okay, thank you. Can we have another question? These questions, I think, will be answered by UNU-INRA. If you're doing any education programs, and if university, I think I'll take that. Yes, young gentleman, we have 2 hands here also. Please identify yourself. You're from Presec.
My name is Jeremy Kwe. Yes, I heard that we have to add value to our raw metals before we export them. But this is not the first time we have all heard this. So I want to ask, why haven't we been able to do that? What are we missing out? That's my question.
Okay, I think Tony is the best person to, I'm sorry, Dr. Obin is the best person. There's another hand here. Okay, and then we'll take about, after this, that will be 5s, then we can go through. Okay. Please, you're not recognized. There's a gentleman at the end. Next round. Yeah.
Okay. So, Asante Rex, and my question is, it was mentioned that there is no governing body for Africa. So, I would like to know the essence or the use of the AU, the African Union. Thank you.
Yeah, so you will have to take that question. He said that there's no governing body for Africa. Africa is not a country. No, please. You'll get your turn. We are going to the resident rep. Yeah, please, you'll have another round after the answers.
Thank you. My question is for Ms. Sheila. You talked about the minerals are critical because of the industries have made it critical, European industries, US, Japan, and so on. At one point, De Beers, we understand, controlled the diamond demand by also restricting what was provided to the market. Is there scope for African nations to get together and restrict the availability of
I would like somebody from UNU-INRA to talk about education programs. Is who from UNU-INRA, if you're running any programs to raise awareness? Yeah, so Dr. Denton will do that.
Thanks. And the short answer is no, not yet. But we do have a project called Glint, which is looking at illicit gold mining and has aspects of the illicitness of mining gold, but also trafficking, financial services, aspects of ecology, etc. So it's quite broad. But I think sometimes the mistake people make is to think that we just do training programs. We're not a full-service university, so we're more like a think tank, and we work on research and research production. But some of our projects do have a capacity building component, and the one I've just mentioned, which is Glint, will also have that capacity building component. I hope that answers your question. But you can talk to us later. My colleagues are all here. Thank you.
Yeah, UNU staff wearing this T-shirt with UNU on them, so just attack them afterwards. In the case of education at the university, we have a well-established Department of Earth Science, okay? And they do a number of programs at both undergraduate and graduate level. We also have the Institute for Environment and Sanitation Studies, which runs an environmental science program where environmental geology is a key element. And we also have a master's in sustainability science, all of which reflect on natural resource and natural resource use. And you can get all the information you want from the University of Ghana websites. However, we should not just focus on the biophysical. One of the points that was raised by the keynote speaker is that this is actually a state of mind. We have made it important because we have thought it important. But we have a very active group, the UG Mining Research Group, which is actually led by people from the humanities who are looking at the implications of mining on communities and social structures, how language is changing. In fact, our own Vice Chancellor is part of that group and has done work on the linguistics associated with, what is it, Chinglish? Is it Chinglish? Yeah, the fact that there's a new language in the mining areas, which is a mixture of Chinese and English and Chakan. Chakan is where you have Chinese and Akan fused together. We won't even go into the reproductive aspect of the number of half-caste Chinese / whatever babies who are often abandoned. So it's a big story that we have to talk about mining. Now, we have a question about the added question, which I think Dr. Obin is the best person as the former head of the Minerals Commission.
Thank you very much. I wish I had an answer to that, but I would go back to what I said. I think over the years, we have allowed, as a continent, as a nation also, external forces to determine our policies. And that's a real issue. We don't seem to realize that. We just, we have had independence about 60-something years ago. We are still using the post-colonial mining framework. And it's only recently that issue of local content gained prominence. And otherwise, there was a time when Ghanaians were not even allowed to touch gold. I mean, before small-scale mining was legalized, it was outlawed for Ghanaians to be close, apart from working at the gold companies and all that. So I think our mindset haven't changed since we extricated. I don't know whether we have extricated ourselves actually. So I think that's the challenge. And again, I said people are now thinking, people are talking, and so we are looking at, apart from Botswana, that's one, and I've proposed Botswana's model to Ghana, where the private sector and the public sector meet in a professional way. In Botswana, you have, and of course, Sheila is here and I'm talking about Botswana, but I know that government has about 52% or 51% of the, and they run it as a business. It is not a party chairman who is the CEO. It is not a party secretary who is the this and that. In Ghana, if we attempt to do that and we are not careful, the party chairman will be the board chairman, if you are lucky, and then the CEO will be the organizing secretary or something like that. So I think, youth organizer or something like that. So we need to disentangle ourselves from this, and I'm happy that the mindset is changing. Thank you.
Yeah, we still operate the 1903 Beach Act for removal of sand from beaches. We haven't changed anything. But we have two questions directed to you. So can we give to her? The first is, AU, should they exist?
Oh, no. I don't think the young man said that. You didn't ask if they should exist, did you? No, yeah. You wanted to understand why the AU is not sufficient to, was that you? Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's quite simple. So the EU functions rather like the United Nations. It's a consortium of nation states that come together voluntarily. And then they take issues that are common to them and create conventions. And each country then has the choice to ratify or not to ratify the convention. So when I say they are not legally competent, because they don't have legal control over their members. By contrast, the EU members, through an EU parliament, which is constituted by law, makes laws that are enforced, not by choice. Once you are a member, the laws will be applied to you and your country collectively and inside. And trade, for instance, is one of the laws over which the EU takes precedence over the laws of the host countries. The African Union doesn't function like that. It's voluntary, and that's what I mean by not legally competent. So if you want them, the generation, you're going to have to change. You're going to have to say to your heads of state, no, we want to be like the EU. You'll have a lot of trouble, I suspect, but good for you.
Pushing for
Pan-Africanism.
United States. But you have a question.
Right. But before I do, I wanted to chime in on Tony, the beneficiations, because this is a big deal. This is another myth. The assumption that if I grow tomatoes, by definition, I must not only manufacture tomato sauce, but that I should have a supermarket selling that. These minerals are exactly the same as you are a farmer and you produce cassava. That's what you sell. You then sell it to a guy who mills the cassava, and another one who buys the mill and makes bread. The idea that if you have gold, you must also have a refinery and then a jewelry shop. And look, folks, it doesn't work like that. Why? Because these are distinct industries requiring distinct levels of knowledge, both technologically, commercially, and otherwise. That the assumption you can just bundle them up into one is flawed. But it doesn't mean it cannot happen. But it does mean you have to disaggregate them as separate industries and see them as that. A Botswana minister once said to me, look, Sheila, this is just a razzmatazz. You people at the BS, he said, you know, we have the diamonds. They go to India to be cut. He said, this is unjust. And I said, Minister, nice question politically, but a wrong one. I said, the question you must ask, and this is the question you should ask. If we are Africa's largest diamond producer, what is it we have failed to do? Which if we did, the people who cut and polish diamonds would be enticed to stay here. Rather than fly them way halfway around the world, it is not that they don't like us. It is that our formula in terms of the ecosystem of commerce is wrong. And the African governments don't ask this question. They think it's logical they should be the ones. But if they understood that it is because Mumbai will cut them more profitably, more economically, and make Botswana itself sell its diamonds at a better price, they would be happy. They are going to India. But no, they don't get it.
It's about control, but I'm going to have to...
No, it's not.
I'm going to have to stop you.
It's efficiency in the value chain.
Yeah.
But you asked the question. You said, well, the beers dominated the market, and with that, they played the market and were able to balance supply such that the price. So the reason we can't do it with other commodities is quite simple. First of all, the beers is a small company, it's a big brand. But, you know, the R&D size at Rio Tinto, it's a very small industry controlled by a few people. Copper is not like that. Look at how many people produce copper, and that was just a handful. So you are not going to achieve that. But the most important thing really is that diamonds are not marketed as a commodity in the open market. You would have to bring around all the copper producers of the world and get consensus. The BS didn't have to do that. They already controlled 80%. They just said, this is how we're going to do it. And if you mess with us, well, guess what? We are bigger than you anyway. So you don't have that same industry construct, and so that's why you can. Was there another question?
That's it.
Right.
But we are going to go. Sorry, you've spoken. So the young man here. Please raise your hand because we have time only for another. Oh my God. Okay, so we'll take one. Then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Please watch the people because you can see the people trying to steal the mic. Could you raise your hand again? 4, 5, 6. What are 7? Yeah. Watch the people. Okay. Please go ahead. Your name first. And please be short, eh?
My name is Emmanuel Tukwate. So my question is more of like a suggestion which needs clarity. Right now we are talking about critical minerals, and from your presentation, minerals becomes critical by our intentions, our deliberate actions. Right now, maybe we had a system where right now Ghana relies on fuel in almost everything, cars, everything. So assuming we had a system where we can simply drift to other energy sources, like right now we had backup as electric cars. If we find out that the fuels prices are going up right now, we can simply drift to electric cars, and the government with its policies can make it more affordable, more than the fuel cars, so that everyone will be to patronize electric cars, which is now cheaper. And if the fuels become balanced with its price, then we can simply drift back and simply have a cycle of change in it.
So there are 3 at this side, and I think 3 at this side. Yeah, so go ahead. The Vice Chancellor has to be out of here. So, yes, go ahead.
Okay, please, my name is Janelle Abe, and I was wondering, how does the UNU-INRA make sure its research actually helps local communities and not just policymakers? Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm Bernard Asibi. So actually my question has to do with the governance and strategy. So the African Mining Division, that's the AMV, was adopted in 2009 as a continental framework to transform minerals wealth into sustainable development. 16 years later, what are the most significant political or economic barriers that have hindered its full implementation? And what new strategies like the African Green Minerals Strategy are being deployed to overcome them? And then the second one has to do with the value addition. All right.
So my name is Isaac Boysen. I'm a representative of Wajisha. I'm a young environmental journalist. So, I mean, most of the things that we heard here, and that's, by the way, a good presentation from both speakers. Most of the things that we heard here, I mean, most of us heard that when we were in GSS. And I would want to say, we've heard of, I mean, gold being underutilized in terms of adding value to it. We've heard about bauxite, even though we have an aluminium factory here in Ghana that we can actually convert the bauxite ore into an alumina that we can actually use for aluminium products, but we are not doing that. So we keep on talking about the issues of not adding values to these minerals. What is expected of us as Ghanaians? What is expected of us as Africans that we are not doing? Because in the next 15 years, in the next 20 years, we don't want to come to a program like this and still be blaming ourselves, because a popular musician said in Ghana here that when you talk about the yellow, you talk about the purple. So if we have been able to identify the problems and then the challenges, where are the solutions, so that in the next 15 years, the young man from here will always be conscious about green industrialization. I will be conscious in communicating and sensitizing people about green industrialization. That is where the curve.
Hi, my name is Wilfred. My question is, the AU has adopted the Africa Green Mineral Strategy. My question is, isn't this a good step, or we are just still on a road to nowhere?
Hello, my name is Patrick Abeku with the Green African Youth Organization, Eco Clubs. My question is, let's Sheila and then look. I think that there was a contradiction where one is we should reserve, we shouldn't mine. So where's the balance? So I want to know, in terms of exploration, are we able to determine the quantity of minerals we have? What is the value of it? And then the cost-benefit analysis. If you are mining, what is the impact on our environment? Looking at the climate change, the crisis that are going to mine. How are you going to go about it?
Okay. And then.
Good evening. My name is Amanda Uswa-Omane. So it was mentioned that because most African countries do not have the infrastructure for mining our own resources, most of the external forces dictate the value of our resources. So I want to find out whether there are strategies that have been put in place for African countries to source out our own machinery and infrastructure for mining these minerals.
Okay, and then the very last gentleman.
My name is Raymond Uswechan. Taking lessons from past energy use, coal, and then it was named as dirty. We need to transition to fossil, and now we are talking about critical minerals. So strategies or advice do we have developing countries so that we don't fall into that trap? So in the next 50 years, are you going to also talk about different minerals? What African?
Yeah, so actually thinking about stranded assets, and UNU-INRA has done a lot of work on that. So we'll put your question aside, and you go to their website, you find a lot of information about that. So between Tony, I think a bulk of them came to you. Yes. Mining and so forth. So if you could try and bundle everything together, because, sorry, before you, Fatima, how much time will you need, Fatima, for your closing remarks? Yes, it says 10 minutes here. Can you do it in 5? Okay. Madam VC, yes, I think because you have to go and get ready for your other event, yes. So can we give the a round of applause? Yeah. The security guard is expert in Taekwondo. If you play fool, he'll deal with you. So, a number of questions about value addition and also about governance at the continental level. We also have a comment, so we'll push that aside. Then we have the then the need for infrastructure to add value. So please, can he have a mic?
I thought I was a mere discussant, so the bulk of the question would have gone to the main speaker, but I know she will come to my rescue. First of all, taking Ghana, generally, we should admit that Ghana is a small country. The country that can only, do a lot of things through cooperation with others. That's where, and we didn't mention ECOWAS, a relationship with other countries that have been together to create the market that would allow us. I know since 75 or the 70s, there have been effort to actually create that environment for industrialization within the sub-region. I don't think we have succeeded. And you're not going to ask me why. Because
that was the question. So what went wrong?
Yes. We are different countries, even though we have common heritage, controlled by different colonial people with different mindset. So even getting ourselves together has been a problem. Just the power to travel within the region without being questioned is still a problem. If you are sending a good from here to Nigeria, the number of stops that you have to go through and the amount of something that will be extracted from you, you probably would decide to stay in Ghana. I think these are bigger questions that have really, not helped us to advance the way we want. So we have the desire, but I think the actual work to get to that, they become political talk shop and they never moved on. So it's quite difficult. And about the issue of the critical minerals and the energy issues, of course, Sheila has indicated that stone used to be a critical mineral. Do you know that? In the Stone Age, stone was a critical mineral. Now, stone is no longer a critical mineral, not because we don't have stone, but stone is of no value. So it is true that we define what a critical mineral is. We are also aware of this climate change issues. And I think it's undeniable. For me, I know some people think it doesn't exist. Some people, resident somewhere, they think the climate change question is a fluke. I believe that there's enough evidence to show that climate change, but Africa's contribution to that, as we all know, is negligible. This is not to say that because of that we don't have to do anything. I'm told that only about 4% of the impact of the environment came from Africa because of underdevelopment, because of lack of development. So this is the time that we need to use what we have in a very conscious way, in a very strategic way, to move into the cleaner subsystem where we'll find ourselves to be just. Others have developed at the back of those coal and all those things. And now it's our time to develop on our fossil fuel as we fade that away, but we still have to develop and make sure that at a point in time we have enough resources that will help us to use electric cars and all that. And if you are indeed lucky to have the so-called critical minerals, then we need to have policies that will help us manage that to our own benefit. And I mentioned value addition. These are all serious policy and economic issues. If you calculate and it doesn't help you to process it in country, it makes no sense to do that. If it doesn't make economic sense and you're only using political sense, you have to go to Abosso to see Abosso Glass Factory, and you see that Abosso Glass Factory was there, but people think it didn't make economic sense to have it, but it was a very good political thing to do. So I think, and of course, somebody was trying to compare EU and then AU. The difference is E and A. They have agreed to be bound by law. They have a structure that they are bound. If you don't want to be part of that, you go away. That is why Brexit came. British people decided that we can't be bound by these laws, so they went. So those who are there, they are bound by that, but we don't have that. So when they take a decision, that decision must be implemented. And as long as, I believe, majority have agreed to it, whether you like it or not, as people say, whether you like it or yes, you have to be bound by that. We don't have the same in AU. And that's, again, another bane. I don't know whether one day that will ever happen, but you talk about after. after it's maybe a clear example of an effort to be bound by that. But let's see how it gets implemented.
Okay. If you can have any remark to wrap up all the questions, governance and...
So I do have to say to the young generation, look, I feel your pain. When I was your age, we were told that our fathers and mothers had taken self-rule so my life would be better, and that I would be talking to you about the things we are. I cannot be clear I will die before I see that. There is nothing in the horizon that says there is the political will to do that who the founding father of your country, the late Kwame Nkrumah, aspired. I have not seen that. So to the question, is the green mineral strategy another A and V? The short answer is damn right it is. It's a piece of paper. It'll be in the shelves. The people who sign it will fly home, and then they will revert to party politics in their country. And the AU will have no bite to say to them, you sign this, you must do it, because the EU is not constructed like that. You want to never forget that. Anything else, frankly, is politically correct, but actually it has no bearing on reality. Beneficiation. So I think you are a little unfair on Ghana. So let me tell you a very good success story in Ghana is the Ghana Manganese Company. The Ghana Manganese Company last year signed an agreement with a Chinese firm to beneficiate manganese here. The Chinese firm is a vertically integrated Chinese mining and processing. That's the perfect formula. The reason, in part, beneficiation doesn't work is because, for whatever reason, our African governments haven't quite gotten it, that a mining company is not a mineral processing company, that if they wish to process, it is not the mining company they want to talk to, it is the mineral processing company. And guess where they are? They are in China, Japan, South Korea, and Vietnam. So this is rather like saying to me, just because I grow tomatoes, I want to buy tomato sauce from you. Well, I can't help you. I don't even know how to make it. I just know how to harvest the raw material. So part of the failing of beneficiation is a policy misconstruction in which our governments are asking mining companies who have no clue, because they trade commodities. They don't process them. I want you to remember this. They do not make metals. Rio Tinto, whether it is in Africa or Australia, ships the iron ore raw. And it is a Japanese company, Mitsui, and others who buy them and produce metals. We want to beneficiate. We need to attract these people who beneficiate into, and those are the ones we want to have a conversation with. Now, why is that rocket science? That I can't tell you. So this is part of the governance. Well, look, let me be politically incorrect. This is an overrated term. Look at Europe. Europe is no better governed than us. But Europe operates within a structure that holds it all together. The problem with the Africans is that in our lack of governance, we disrupt even the very status quo we try and create. Tell me a country, Russia better governed, China better governed, America better governed, come on. But there is a consensus around what the fundamentals of these countries are, and it stays together. In Africa, most of the countries I've seen, there is no sense of what is it that we want to do and what does it take to hold it together. And therefore, my sense is that it is not so much governance as perceived in terms of transparency, accountability and public participation. It is governance as in, what is the roadmap and how do we get there? And what are the component parts? When you figure that out, you will govern. But when you govern using the 3 ways that came from somewhere that have no bearing on your reality, are you surprised there's no coherence? So in my mind, I think we have to also reconstruct this notion of governance. Whose governance anyway? And governance to what purpose? And so in my humble opinion, unless we revisit this, the tragedy of your question of when do I stop asking about beneficiation is that I don't have an answer. On the contrary, my sense is you'll be asking another 40 years because I see nothing in the horizon that addresses those fundamentals. I don't. And if I said to you, if you do X and Y, you will get there, well, that's what they told me. And here I am still talking to you. So, very sad note to end. But it seems to me, the least my generation can tell you is that we too were told. That's the most I can tell. We too were told. So can you save yourself? I want you to think very carefully. I can't save you. I couldn't save myself. But can you save yourself? So stop looking to somebody else where to fly in from Botswana and give you an answer. It's not going to happen. Stop thinking the AU is going to do it. It's not going to happen. It would have happened. 60 years is a lifetime. I showed you South Korea here. Do you know that Ghana was born in the same year as South Korea? Now, the cell phones you sell are from South Korea. The cars you drive are from South Korea. Now think. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. We are coming to the end. Ruki has an announcement. Ruki, please.
Okay, hello everyone. Please, in regards to the questions being asked about what we do at INRA, we brought some of the copies of our reports here. So we have justice backgrounder, we have stranded assets, we have scoping study for research to action priorities. There are lots of them here, so if you need any of them, you can see me or go to the registration booth for one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ruki.
And then we recently launched a report on critical minerals, so if you are here and you want to partner with us in any of them, you can also talk to me, then we see the way forward.
Great. Well, I'm at the... So let me use this. I always like to give tests. I want a test for the Presec boys. Can anybody tell me what an oxymoron is? Can anybody tell me? Yes, sir. No, you just say. So basically opposite words used together, like jumbo shrimp. Yeah, clap for him. The reason I brought it up is because our good discussant, Dr. Tony Obin, used an oxymoron in his response. That was political sense. The young people, what our honorable speaker has just told us, Sheila, is that you generation, in a very short way, you're screwed. If you don't stand up and do something for yourselves, you will not change. But it will be worse, because you also have the heavy metals in your body, the forest, the water is gone. People are bathing with sachet water now. It's all my back case. I'm not going to be around in 2050. Yeah, I'm not planning for that. So with that, let me invite our esteemed director of UNU-INRA to give closing and vote of thanks We are running. Okay, it's okay. That's not too bad.
So much. I think Prof always creates a degree of stress, huh? Because here we are, after this very eloquent lecture from Sheila, and I had a few things that I would like to add to the debate, and I almost feel like I'm being silenced. I'm being silenced. And if you know Fatima, I don't respond well to being silenced. Thank you very much, Sheila. So much you said resonated with me. And like Dr. Obi said, I felt at some stages that I was rethinking and dismantling some of the concepts I had. Let me come to one concept which I think is so important, and you talked about this, which is the way in which you unpacked the whole aspect of criticality. Why is that important? Because I think at some stage in your talk, you mentioned the word narrative. And if I follow the conversation we've just had, it would seem as if we are following a narrative that is not been written by us, not been shaped by us, but one that we're using now to create this sense of relevance, sense of importance, sense of can-do. And I think that that in itself is something to think about. Because for me, I came here thinking, and we've just done a paper, I myself have just written something on critical minerals not so long ago, that obviously criticality is not a universal term. It's context specific. And it's shaped, as you said, there are geopolitical issues, there are national priority issues. But I think that the interesting thing for me is the fact that in most of these terminologies that we use, criticality being one of them, the shaping of that, even the word green industry, when did we start adding color to industrialization? So it seems to me that those things are shaped by a current tide, whereby we have to move towards this decarbonization. But I think it's also important that in as much as these things are shaped elsewhere, they have consequences for us. Because we haven't talked a lot about the ecological dimension, and there is one. We are bearing the externalities of the criticality of others. So that's a point I think we cannot lose. We must not lose sight of it. The critical dimension, as you've said, can be defined by others. The US is talking about a securitization. They're talking about an energy policy. They're talking about how they can scale up in terms of renewable energy. These agendas, I mean, the consumption is not here. Demand is not here. The definition of what is important is not here. These are all things that are wholesale, foisted on Africa that we are now taking. But I think we also need to realize that it's a bit of a poison chalice. We really are in that situation. I don't want to use the word screwed, but we are. We have to do something because the ecological dimension is being born. I mean, it's been born by Africans. You take the DRC, and I don't think you mentioned that, but look at the story of cobalt. Look at the faces of the people who are bearing that loss. Countries who've had a mining history and had long years of mining, when we talk about responsible mining or sustainable mining, I often wonder whether that's not an oxymoron. I often wonder if that's not how do you do that? Because countries that have had a long history of doing that do not have the agricultural potential that would mean that we can feed ourselves or Africa can feed itself. And I just wanted to give, I was looking this up just so that I don't say something that is wrong. I lived in Ethiopia for 6 years. It's a country that has a very low motorization rate. I think there are about 3 to 5 vehicles for 1,000 people. Now, this is interesting also because the country's transport fleet is quite small, and there's a lot of imported vehicles. But this is the country now that is making waves, as they say, in terms of electric vehicles. So is the critical minerals, is that the most important thing that we can do with the critical minerals? Are there not other important SDG goals that we must realize, including in Ethiopia, a country of over 100 million people, where there are aspects of food insecurity, there are aspects of energy insecurity. So again, who is shaping the narrative? And Sheila, you ended on a sad note. I want to end on a positive one. This is my positive note. I think you've asked so many insightful questions. You've helped us really understand the aspects of criticality. You've unpacked it in a way that I never would have imagined. So it's really good. But I'm thinking something else. Maybe I'm a bit of a romantic here. But I'm thinking, can Africa turn a historical disadvantage into strategic leverage? What do I mean by that? So we've been excluded from the gains of industrialization that happened on our, it was we were more or less peripheralized. We were not in that industrial process, as I often say. It was one whereby we provided the raw materials and others gained from that. So we've been excluded from the gains of that. So now, and I disagree slightly on the governance side, if we managed our resources with a bit more foresight, then I think this paradox becomes power. And what do I mean by that? It means that the continent can now transform its situation from bearing the cost of the externalities to claiming the power of enabling the global decarbonization, right? So we have hosted the resources, but we haven't hosted the industries. And we have borne the consequences of that, supplying the raw materials to others. But what I am saying now is that we can have a double advantage now. And that double advantage for me, it means that these copper, nickel, manganese, all of these that are being exploited elsewhere, we can now trade that for a decarbonization, large-scale exercise, whereby we dictate the value, the outcome of that decarbonization. So that to me is an advantage. We can stop being the victim, and we can become it could become a net dividend for us, depending on how we do it. So that's why I think governance is important. So we can move from victim, as I said, to becoming an indispensable architect, and an architect of that low carbon future. The low carbon future that everybody wants, we could be the enabler of that low carbon architect. So let me go straight to my, so that was my note of, that was my positive note. I want to thank you, Sheila. I know just how busy you are. Sheila, as you see her, comes with a lot of gravitas. Huh? When she speaks, you feel it. Everything she says is gold, and diamond. And we were happy to be here to mine that diamond. So thank you so much, Sheila. I think it was a lecture that we haven't seen for a long time, because you brought depth and clarity and provocation, the provocation especially, I think, gave us a lot of food for thought. Thank you very much. Thanks for making time for this. The Vice Chancellor's not here, but I wanted to just extend my thanks to her for the partnership we have with the University of Ghana. And the Vice Chancellor is somebody that I hold in high esteem, because every time she comes to these meetings, she comes with a degree of intellectual curiosity. And that is something that is also very, very welcome. I want to also say thanks to advisory board members. They are sat in the second row. Our chair, Professor, well, he says we shouldn't call him professor, so Dr. Yemi Katerere. Dr. Yemi Katerere, Professor Lisk, Professor Gordon, the very incomparable Professor Gordon. So thank you board members, because a lot of these things that we're talking about started in the boardroom, where we expose these issues to you, we talk to you about the complexity of dealing with these things, and you help in that sort of orientation and guidance. So you are the very source of these rich conversations that we're having, so thank you for your support. I want to also thank my colleagues, the coordinators of the operating units. We have 5 operating units. We have 3 that are here. Madame Binate from Côte d'Ivoire, Professor Sam Mafwila from Namibia, and Dr. Juwet Masinja from Zambia. So thank you so much. The operating units are very much part of INRA. Together we make up a lot of the value add that we've been talking about. And we wouldn't be able to do a lot of the things we're talking about without the operating units. Resident coordinator, thank you so much. You're new to Ghana, but already we're beginning to appreciate the level of support that you bring to these processes. So thank you again, and for your collegiality. There are a few UN heads of agency here. I've seen the head of UNESCO. So for all the UN agencies, thank you for your support. Thanks for your collegiality as well, and for all the meaningful partnerships as well. The Kwapong family, I think, are not here. Sadly, they tend to be here. Oh, okay. All right. Great. Great, because I was looking out for Karantama, but thank you to the Kwapong family. Thanks for being present and for being consistently present in these conversations. Professor Kwapong continues to inspire us, even for some of us who did not have the privilege of meeting and knowing him. Thank you very much. Let me now turn to my colleagues. We have a room full of people, and we want to thank you, the audience, for coming. But all of this work would not have come together without the team at INRA. We're a very small team, but we are a very resourceful team. Looking at Kondi Moy over there, who can do 5, 6, 7 jobs. Although as a manager, I shouldn't say that, because people shouldn't multitask at that level. It's not good. So I shouldn't say that, but just to give you a sense of how hard the team works. So I want to thank all of them. I started with Kondi. Kondi, thank you so much for all you do. I want to thank Vanessa, whom I haven't seen, but who's been also very, very resourceful, very hardworking in trying to bring everyone together and to make this a huge success. Thank you, Vanessa. What's the African word? Do we have an African terminology for Amazonians? I'm going to Brazil soon, and it just dawned on me that we have some Amazonians in my team. But what's the African? There must be an equivalent word for Amazonian. What was the name that they called the women in Benin, the warriors? Do they have a name? Okay. Okay, I will pass on that one. But I want to thank Imelda, who I also haven't seen in the room, but Imelda, Kondi, Vanessa, Barbara. We have a lot of women in our team. Angela, Ruki, all the women in the team, right? We're celebrating women. Thank you so much. Thanks to Jonathan, thanks to Leo, thanks to Samuel, thanks to Ferdinand, thanks to Kenneth, thanks to Faiz. We were practicing the Arabic pronunciation of that word. Thanks to Faiz. Thanks to all of you. And in case I've forgotten anyone, perished the thought. I hope I haven't. But in case I've forgotten everyone, thanks to the entire INRA team for all the hard work. I want to just end by saying that teams are they're not just groups of people. You work together, you dream together, you think together, you analyze together. So you come with all that sort of collective mind. And this is what we want to see in most of the things that we do. So again, thanks again to you, our audience, for making time, staying the course. And I want to also not end the conversation without thanking, as I said, our incomparable Chris Gordon, who you never underwhelm. And you never disappoint. So the reason why we're having a conversation that is so animated and that has so much humor in it as well is because Chris Gordon is the person that he is. He comes with all of that knowledge, and he's able to help us navigate through all these complexities. So once again, thank you very much. But I think, Chris, I'm not the last speaker. There's something else that needs to happen before we end. Were you aware of it? There is a gift for Sheila. So where is Imelda? Colleagues, can somebody get Imelda quickly, because it's meant to be part of the ceremony. We do it at every Kwapong lecture. Imelda, we need the gift. She's coming. Yes, let's call Yemi. Yemi, please, can you come to the podium? Hand this over to you. We're presenting it.
So, we're waiting for the gift. There it comes. Thank you. Thank you very much. Sheila, please come up on behalf of INRA. Really want to extend our appreciation for this thought-provoking talk that you gave, very inspiring. And I think that you really raised a lot of important issues that we will be engaging with. And so please accept, on behalf of INRA, a small token of appreciation. And thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you.
Please, the refreshment is outside, so when you get out, then you take your refreshment. Thank you.